Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm so excited because I'm going to share all the details about my birth story and just get you all updated on how that went, and I'm just super excited about it. And sorry about the location, we're currently in my car. My husband and baby are sleeping and I'm going out of town, so I was like, I need to film this now or else I'm never going to do it. So here I am in my car. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so we're just gonna start back at 36 weeks. When I was 36 weeks, that was the first time they checked my cervix, and no dilation, no progress, no nothing. And that was my answer every single week until I hit 39 weeks. It was always, no progress, you're not very soft yet, da, da, da. And it was always like talk of like, okay, we're gonna induce you like 1 week after your due date, blah, 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 blah. Like every time I went in, and it was like the most defeating, like, if you're pregnant or you've had a baby, you just like know how miserable you are at the end, and hearing that you've made no progress, you're like, okay, like I'm just gonna go cry, which I did. I just went and cried like every time. Like it was the worst news every single time. But anyways, so at my 39 week appointment, they checked me and my doctor was like, okay, you're like kind of maybe a 1. Like you're maybe a 1. Like, so pretty much I was dilated to nothing still. And he's like, if I had to make a bet in Vegas, like I would bet that you're not gonna go into labor on your own. Like you're gonna, like we're gonna have to induce you. And I was like, okay, thank you, love you. Like so bugged. Like it was so annoying when he said that to me. But anyways, so at 39 weeks, I had like no progress, was hardly dilated. And in my head, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to wait till I'm induced. And then the night before my due date, I was out shopping with a friend, and like TMI, but like this is the birth story, so it's gonna be TMI like the whole time. But we were out shopping and I was like, holy freak, like I've been pooping a ton like all night long. And that's like a symptom, and that's like a symptom of going into labor. Is like you just like poop a ton, and I had been like pooping a ton. I'm like, hey, it's probably nothing, whatever. And then I go to bed, like same old night, go to bed, and then all night long I like feel like something's like, it's like the weirdest way to describe it, but it felt like Logan was like knocking on my cervix. I mean, not on my cervix, yeah, on your cervix, whatever. It felt like she was like knocking on me, and I was like it was the weirdest feeling ever, and it was just like kept waking me up all night long. Like just like it felt like she was like tapping on me from the inside, and it was just the weirdest feeling, whatever. And then later that night I wake up and I like sit up and just pop, like I feel a pop, I hear a pop, and just like gush. So I'm like, OMG, my water just broke. And I like shake my husband. I'm like, Eric, wake up, like we gotta go, whatever. And he's like frantic, panicking. And like, I wasn't sure if you were supposed to go to the hospital right after your water breaks, or if you wait for contractions, or like what it is. And so I like call my doctor, and he's like, no, you need to get in because they're like worried about infection once your water breaks, because you're like open to more infections. You like don't have that protective barrier anymore. So anyways, he's like, no, you need to go into the hospital like as soon as you can get there. And so I quick shower and then put on a freaking Depends diaper. Thank goodness I had them. If you are close to going into labor, buy some of those diapers and just have them at your house, because if your water breaks, like what are you supposed to do? Like, because you're constantly, I didn't realize, but you're constantly leaking, and like you need something or else you're just gonna like leak through onto everything. So anyways, that was at like 3:30 in the morning when my water broke. And then so we get to the hospital, and they're like, okay, like we're gonna put you into a room and we'll like check to make sure your water is actually broken. So we like go get checked into a room, and they like do the test to see if my water is broken, and the test comes back negative. And the girl is like, oh, like it's negative, like your water's not broken, whatever. And I'm like, okay, unless I am peeing literally every 2 minutes, like my water is broken. So like I was like so annoyed. I'm like, test it again, and it like started gushing like then, and I was like, okay, test it again. She tested again and it was positive. So yeah, my water broke. And then once it was like for sure, we started talking about what our plan was going to be and stuff. So they started me on a drug called like I don't remember what it's called, but it's meant to soften your cervix. So they started me on that before they put me on. So my water broke at 3:30. I got to the hospital at like 4:30. And then at like 6:30, they were ready to start me on that drug. So yeah, once your water breaks, there's like a cushion that just like disappears. So it's like even just there moving is like so much more uncomfortable than it used to be. And like it feels like contractions and like your stomach's deflated. Like it's a really weird feeling, but whatever. So I wasn't sure if I was like having contractions or not or what it was. And then once they had given me the drug to soften my cervix, I feel like it got the ball rolling. And so I started having more contractions and things, but it like wasn't enough pain to be on to like get my epidural. And also, I don't know if this is weird or not, but I like wanted to like feel my contractions and like feel the process a little bit before I was just like, give me the epidural, just because I wanted to like, not that it's a cop out if you get your epidural right when you do, but I wanted to like experience it a little bit. I like in no way, shape, or form did I want to go naturally, like give me the freaking drugs, but like I also wanted to experience labor a little bit. So I like labored and was on that drug for a while, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna start you on Pitocin, and they gave me like the smallest dose of Pitocin that you like that they start you on. It's just like a super small dose. And so they gave me the little bit of Pitocin, and then my contractions like really started to kick in, and I was like, okay, I like need something. And they give you this drug, another drug that I don't know what the name is. I wish I should have looked up the names for these things. But they give you another drug, and it kind of just like makes you loopy. So like you kind of just don't like recognize that you're in as much pain as you're in. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like kind of like a laughing gas type of idea when you go to the dentist, but it was like a different drug. Anyway, so they're giving me that, and like once you get to a certain dose of that, it's like your body, like your pain just like gets past that, and it's like that drug's just gonna stop working and like doesn't do what you need it to anymore. So I had been on that drug, taking that drug, and I had my, sorry, I'm like all over the place, but I had my daughter 6 months ago, so I'm like trying to remember all the little details. But anyways, so had given me a little dose of Pitocin. I was taking that drug that like makes you loopy, and then I had gotten to the point where I was like, okay, like I think I'm ready for my epidural. Mind you, my nurse had told me, she's like, there's only one person here doing epidurals, and he has a C-section at, I can't remember what time, but he has a C-section at this time, so you should need to let me know like ahead of time when you're gonna want your epidural. So I told her like an hour in advance, and I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna want my epidural this time. And so it was like on the clock, scheduled like when I was gonna get my epidural. And then the guy that was giving the epidurals he was giving a more overweight woman an epidural, and he was having a really hard time like getting it in. And so that took him an hour to put that epidural in, which, mind you, to put an epidural in, it usually takes like 20 minutes-ish. So he was running late from that epidural, which pushed him late into his C-section, and I was gonna get my epidural right after he was out of the C-section. So I was laboring for like 2 hours, I wanna say 2.5, 3 hours longer than what I wanted to be, and I was freaking miserable. Like, to all you mamas out there who go naturally, I freaking bow down to you, because I could not experience that type of pain. Like, it was so much, and I was at like a 3 or 4. Like, I wasn't even dilated very far, and I was laboring like all in my back. I'm like making my husband push as hard as he can against my back. He's like not pushing hard enough, and he's like, I'm pushing as hard as I can. Like, it was just like chaos, and like I was a beast. He was getting angry. Like, it was just bad. And then so the guy finally came in to give me my epidural, and I was like, freaking thank the heavens. Like, comes in to give me my epidural. Mind you, every time anybody would ask me like, are you nervous for your labor, like da da da, I was so nervous about the epidural, because I had heard horror stories and was just so nervous. Like, a giant needle in my back, like just wasn't gonna fly. Like, just so nervous. It was nothing. Like, do not worry about your epidural. If you have somebody that like knows what they're doing, like, it was just fine. And it was literally the only thing I felt was like a little like zing, like a quick little jolt of like a little shock, and that was it. And it was like nothing. And then I was like 15 minutes later, and it was like the most relaxed, like enjoyable experience of my life after I got my epidural. And that's one thing that like, one reason I'm like really game for epidurals is because I would like the tension between me and my husband, like while I was contracting, and like I was just, it's not even like him being contentious with me, it was me being like, oh my gosh, like anybody in there, like I was just like a miserable person to be around for those 2 hours. So I just feel like it wouldn't have been nearly the experience if I wouldn't have gotten an epidural. So it was like, for me personally, it was very much so the right choice. I think it's a different thing if you like plan to like go naturally and you had like a game plan, but like I didn't have a game plan. So anyways, once I got the epidural, it was just like game changer, and I was just so relaxed, and it was such an enjoyable like day. By the time I'd got my epidural, it was probably like noon, maybe 1, and I was at like a 4, maybe a 5 when I finally got my epidural. And then it was kind of like I stayed at like a 4 or 5-ish from like 12, 1-ish around that time to like 5:30 to like 5:30. So 3:30 my water broke, got to the hospital 4:30, got on Pitocin around like 10, then got my epidural at like 12, and then around like 5 o'clock I was finally, like at like 5 o'clock I got to a 6, and it was in like 30 minutes. It was like I went from 6 to a 10. Like it was so fast. And once like I actually got, so I'd gone from like a 6 to a 10 like that, like so fast. I had a videographer come, and I was like so nervous she wasn't gonna make it, so I like texted her when I was at a 6, and she's like, "Okay, I'll be there in like 15 minutes." She's like, "Okay, I'll be there in like 15-20 minutes." And then like she gets there and it was like go time. So I had my family in the room for a little bit while I was laboring, but I just wanted the actual labor process just to be me and my husband. So once the nurse told me I was at a 10, I was like, "Okay, like everyone leaves." So it was me, my husband, and our videographer, and then just the nurse and the doctor. And I remember right before before she had like, my nurse checked me, he's like, "Hey, you're at a 10. I remember literally like every 5 minutes, I'm like, "You need to check me. Like I am either pooping my pants or my baby is falling out of me right now." Like the amount of pressure you feel when you're like ready to start pushing. It's like literally I was like, I am almost positive I'm just like, I'm pretty sure she's just like out of my body right now. Like there is so much freaking pressure. So that was just like a funny little part of labor that I just like wasn't ready for that type of pressure for some reason. I mean, obviously I understand your baby has to come out of you, but for some reason in my head I just like wasn't expecting that part. But anyways, so it's like go time to push. Everyone leaves the room except for my husband and stuff, and it was like all of a sudden we're like ready to push, and it was so surreal. And I didn't realize how freaking tiring it is pushing a baby out. Like with all of my might, pushing as hard as I can. I started pushing at like 5:30, and also it was like so calm, and there was just one nurse and me and my husband and our videographer for like majority of my actual like pushing the baby out process. And it was amazing. Like I was expecting there to be like nurses everywhere and for it to be like chaos, but it was like so calm. Like I loved it. Like I would like have a contraction and like push, and then we would like talk for a little bit, and we were like laughing and like like it was just like such an enjoyable experience. Like I loved every minute of my birth. And anyways, so we're like, they like tell me to put my feet up in the stirrups, whatever, and like the nurse has my husband count to 10 for all my contractions. And so I'm just like contracting, whatever. The doctor like comes and checks me, and it took me a while. I pushed for an hour altogether. Yeah, it took me an hour, maybe an hour and a half to get Logan here. But so I was like pushing, and then you like get to a certain point where the baby's like out to a certain point. Because when you're like having contractions and having a baby, you like push, and then your baby like sinks back in, and you push, and like it's just like that process over and over again until you push them to the spot where they're like out, and then you just have to like push them the rest of the way out. Baby gets there, it's like, so once Logan was in the spot she needed to be, they're like, "Hey, stop, like we're gonna go get the doctor." So I stopped, like the most pressure I've ever felt my whole entire life, mind you. So I like stop, and the doctor comes in really fast, like right away, and then it was like 3 pushes and she was here. and I totally forgot to add this in earlier, but they gave me 1 dose of Pitocin, and my body like they gave me 1 dose of Pitocin, and every time I was having a contraction, Logan's heart rate was like going down. Like every time contraction, her heart rate was down. So it was just like this game of like us watching her heart rate the whole time really closely. And C-section was like kind of talked about, but not really seriously. But so we were just watching her heart rate like crazy. And so they stopped giving me Pitocin after the first dose. And then my body just kind of like took over. And so it ended up working out fine, having had more doses of Pitocin. But anyways, we figured out why her heart rate was dropping like that so bad. It's because when she was born, her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck so tightly 2 times, and she was like so purple. Like my nails were painted like a violety lavender color, and she was like so much darker than my nails. But anyways, right after I had her, I wanted them to put her on my chest right away, like not wipe her off or anything. So they like brought her up to me, stuck her on my chest for like 2 seconds, and they're like, okay, we need to take her. And they took her, and that was like the worst, hardest part. They took her for like 45 minutes, which was the worst because I was getting stitched up in that time, and majority of the time you would have like your baby to distract you, and I didn't have her with me because obviously she needed help at that time, and because she swallowed a bunch of amniotic fluid, so they were just trying to get that out of her system. But it was so sad, and while I'm like sitting there getting stitched, it was like the worst because like you can't feel anything, but you can feel the pressure of things. So it was like I'd like feel the pressure of the needle. Sorry, TMI again. I'd like feel the pressure of the needle, and it was almost like my brain was like, you're in pain. Like it was a weird like connection. So I was like feeling like I was in pain, but I wasn't in pain. Like I don't know what's happening with my baby. So it was just like that part of my labor was like so not as I wanted it to go. And they like had her for like 45 minutes, and then they finally handed her to me, and then she looked more purple again, so they took her back, and they like had to call respiratory in, which I didn't realize until I went back and watched my raw footage. And yeah, so she had a really hard time with breathing and stuff, but then finally they gave her to me, and all was well, and it was the most magical experience of my life. Like I want to give birth 100 more times. Like I loved my birth, and I loved my birth, and I loved my experience, and it just went really well. And the only thing I would have changed honestly is how I like afterwards I just wished that she was healthy enough for me to have her right away. And all was well in the hospital. We stayed there for like 2 nights. Logan had a really hard time with like eating for the first day, which was really scary because they had to like pump out her stomach a few times to get the amniotic fluid out. And that was like really scary that first day because we thought something was wrong because she like stopped sucking, stopped eating, but then said lots of prayers and things worked out, and she's a healthy little being. And she was 8 pounds. But yeah, she was born and she was 8 pounds, 15 ounces, and 21 inches. She was a big baby, and she peed before they weighed her too. So they think that she would have been a 9-pound baby. So it was like crazy, but it was awesome, and I loved it. It was such an enjoyable experience. I loved it. Like I said, I would do it 100 more times. But yeah, thanks so much for watching this video, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'm so open. I would be so open to do a video just about the questions of birth and stuff. I'm no expert, but I mean, I've done it once, so I kind of know. But if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. I would love it if you subscribe. Video you can look forward to, I'm going to post my official birth story. And yeah, you can look forward to that, and we'll see you next time.